Just a little change in the routine again. I think that of one thing that we're used to in 2020 is a change of routine. So today's a Tuesday that our guys are off, which obviously for Election Day, and give them an opportunity to make sure they use it the right way. Personally, would rather have had them today so that we could actually spend a little more time not just practicing, but then going through the election process and maybe making a greater impact. But the reality is we've moved on since last week, and we actually changed up, practiced last night, really had a good night, and now we got to get ourselves back into the groove here of getting prepared for Houston after a big win this past weekend. We talked about a little bit of a redemption of the two losses we had last year, but I think hopefully we've got a really mature crew that understands and realizes that as we continue to move forward, the expectations, a lot of things continue to rise, and that's what they're excited about.
All right, go ahead with questions.
Go ahead, Chad.
All right, nobody else wants to take the jump. Coach, this is a Houston team that is they've struggled a little bit, but they've got a lot of talent across the board. Is it difficult to maybe make sure the guys stay focused on, that you're playing a team that's really good, talent-wise, that hasn't hit their stride yet?
Yeah, I think playing them last year, hopefully that we do understand what it is that we're in for, because they were struggling a bit last year when we went down to Houston, and they gave us everything we could ask for. And they were kind of they had just lost their quarterback. They had lost their backup quarterback, had a hamstring, and so they were kind of rolling in there. They played 3 different quarterbacks on us, but we did learn from last year that I think they might have the best receiver core that we had faced. Obviously there's some really good ones in this league with UCF and Memphis, but we're every bit as good as anybody we faced last year and have talent across the board. We have got to continue to make sure that we're taking strides to, no matter what, be able to play our best ball at the end of the year. And hoping and believing that those things that we've been preaching for the last year and a half about playing really, really well at the end of the year and how you do it continues to sink in as some things around us, change.
But you talked, I believe, after that USF game about maybe trying to tweak some plans, game plans for Dez to try and help him get going, especially early. Do you feel like that's been the case these past 2 weeks?
I think in some ways, but I think it's a whole. I think that his ability to get a little bit more comfortable, like he says, of things slowing down. The speed of the game hasn't slowed down, as we all know. It's the things that go on within our head, and I think that all a part of that, of getting more comfortable, not just in the what we're doing offensively, because we've been doing very similar things for the last 3 years. But getting as comfortable as you can with the people that are around you as well. So I think it's a combination. I think that the offensively, obviously, the Coach Denbrock and those guys on that side have really kind of done a good job at honing in and helping him to slow things down, being consistent with what we're doing, and keeping the guys around him very consistent as well.
Luke, what do you think of the idea that all Division I student athletes have the day off today for Election Day? These are, for a lot of these kids, the first time they'll ever vote. Now that they're 18 and older. So, what are kind of your thoughts as a head coach of a team right now in the middle of a really important season of having the day off to do that?
Well, I think for us, we look at the positives, and it's an ability for us to make sure the guys understand that there's a lot of other things that go on. And in order to be great at what it is you do, you've got to be able to have some balance. You've got to be able to compartmentalize. It's our job to make sure they understand how important it is for us to do our part, and that is a part of voting. But I think it's also important for us to make sure that our players understand how important it is for us to make sure we're setting the right example for them. And I think that having our hands on them, since we are during the season, I think we make a greater impact with them, meaning make sure they understand what the day is all about, how you go about the day, what's important about the day, even as far as taking it, not any propaganda, but even as far as taking it another step further of doing stuff together, and making sure they're aware of the grand scheme of the scope of what an election day is really about. I believe you can do it both, and I think you make a greater impact personally on them when you have our hands on them and with them, and can be an example to that. So it is what it is. Obviously, it's a change up in the schedule. I just always believe that when there's something as big as an election day, as big as social injustice, so as big as all those things that affect our 18 to 22 year olds, I believe when we've got our hands on them and we're with them, that we can even hopefully make a greater impact on them, as opposed to sometimes just giving them the day off, because everybody uses their time off differently. So again, maybe that's a little bit selfish to think that knowing them, we can make a greater impact having them around us. But I think that's what our program's all about.
Do you think you'll set aside some time tomorrow to maybe talk about whatever unfolds tonight?
I don't know. I think it's really difficult because and you get a little bit put behind. But I think that's what, if guys don't understand how we do things on a Friday night, we work all week, we prepare, and then on a Friday night, we kind of relax. And whether it's playing cards, whether it's having those conversations, I think things like this really kind of, become a Friday night conversation, and where you share a lot of different things because you're only together with your teammates. Those Friday nights are for a lot of different things. And I think something like this, whether it's social injustice, whether it's election, there's no distractions on a Friday night for us. We have our guys in a captive audience, where it's much more difficult now with 2020, with COVID, to even sit down and have your dinners. Our Friday nights have been able to keep us somewhat intact so that we can have those deeper conversations about things that are going on within our world, within our country, and within our program.
The past 2 weeks as a whole, how has the defense been so prepared? It seemed like you had a game plan and you executed really well.
Well, I think that our guys understand the what and the whys. I think more than that, we have been somewhat simple and try to be consistent in what we're doing. And when you're having success, it makes it a little bit easier to stay consistent. But you always got to be growing, and you always got to be tweaking some things. But you got to give the credit to our guys, and not just because they're really good football players, but they understand the what and the whys, which allows us and Coach Freeman and those guys as coaches to be able to make those little tweaks, because it's not something that's a wholesale new, and you're starting to get to that point where those guys completely, for the most part, understand what it is that we're doing. Now they've got a better chance to study their opponent, be more aggressive, anticipate things a lot more, which lets you play a little freer.
Coach, this is now your second straight game on ESPN, third overall this season. Does it mean anything to you that you guys are playing on the biggest network within that network family, or does that not really resonate with you?
Well, probably not with me a whole lot. I don't know as much about it, but I know it does for our kids. I think the ability to, knowing where they're playing on, and their friends and families and everybody get an opportunity to see them. Not everybody's families can come, and not that everybody's families can't get the game wherever it is, but they understand. They know the magnitude. They know that the more success we have, the better opportunities they have of, their friends, their families, and everybody being able to see them in prime time. So those things definitely add up, and I think it's really fortunate for our guys. I think
Do you think that causes them to up the intensity of practice leading up to the game when you're on ESPN?
No, I think you got to look at it both ways, and when you've got a mature group, which I think we have, and I've kind of said the last couple of weeks, their ability to be mature, those things don't affect you as much. So, I surely don't tell them on Sunday or Monday at what network we're playing on and things like that. I'm not saying they don't understand it, but you're hoping that you don't have to rise and fall based on what network you're on, based on, whether it's election day, whether a guy's having a good day or bad day, that they understand, the maturity, the pro side of things is no matter what, we got to come to work, ready to work, do what it is we do to get ourselves ready for a Saturday, whatever we're playing on.
Coach, Desmond Ritter's got the Offensive Player of the Week in the conference 2 weeks in a row. What makes him so good?
Well, I think his comfortability, but I think his ability to do it all. And that's not just run the football. That's not just throw the football. I mean, his ability to make checks, his ability to read to see what it is that the defense is giving him. I think early on, some of that press, him pressing maybe a little bit much, was making him force things. And his ability to kind of relax a little bit, be who he is, and not try to be somebody else, has really given us the opportunity to be where we are. And, that there's a lot of different things. People would think there's one in particular thing that goes into it. It's not. It's not just that all of a sudden it slowed down for him. I think it's a combination of his coaches doing a really good job with him, making sure he's aware, but also his offensive line, making sure that he knows and they know each other, that they've got each other's back. And when you can rely on things like that and trust things like that, it allows you to play a lot freer, and it makes him look a lot better at times as well.
Coach, can you talk about the Houston Cougars and what you expect from them?
Well, I mean, again, they gave us everything we wanted last year, and they were in a little bit of a different, tougher situation when they just had their quarterback had redshirted and their wide receiver. It is a very talented team. I think they'll come in here offensively and have a good combination. Obviously, they are in some ways want to throw the football around, but they will do a much better job running the football than some people probably think. The quarterback is very dynamic in his ability to run as well and make things happen with his feet. And then defensively, I think they'll come in, they'll challenge us on the outsides. I think they'll get up on you, play some man or some quarter coverage and press them, get in some wide shades and really make your front guys have to work, especially in pass protection.
If I ask you honestly,
does that mean you think I might lie? Before we go into the question, if you say honestly, does that mean that you think that I may not be honest with you?
Yes,
okay.
It does.
Okay.
It does. So here comes the truth serum.
Okay.
Do you know where you're ranked?
I probably do, because last week I heard, because it was Kobe Bryant's number, I think maybe I've seen it on a Twitter feed. I try to get off of it as fast as I possibly can if I do happen to see it. So I think I got a pretty good idea. I wouldn't be sure if that's like a coach's poll or whatever different kind of polls there are. But I try to avoid it at all possibilities.
Okay, so the follow-up then is, are you at all aware of what's becoming a growing national buzz about your team being honestly considered for the college football playoff?
No, because I don't, listen to a lot of those things. I try not to, get into the ESPN even of watching it. But I mean, before that, even before anybody else says that, I mean, I've got an idea of where we could be and what we need to do. But I think that's just trying not to be naive. I want to make sure I understand what our guys are hearing and seeing, and not to say, hey, it's like the elephant in the room, we don't talk about it. But I also want them to enjoy some of that stuff, just not too much. So I think there's a really good balance to, can you handle it maturity-wise, whether you're a coach or a player? Can you use it in your own ways as motivation is what I think is most important.
You're spending too much time on my Twitter feed, Coach.
I didn't drop you yet? Oh, okay. I'm not allowed to like you or anything like that because of your recruiting side, but I've already got in trouble for that.
When you put together your long-term plan for this program, how close are you to where you planned on being year 4?
Well, we haven't won a championship yet, and I think no matter what, anything besides anything else, that was probably the number one thing that, by year 3 or 2, obviously you wanted it in year 1, but the realities were, so we haven't done that yet. Along with the recruiting side of things, I think we're really, really good and on par for where we wanted to be. And I don't just mean by having great players. I mean by where they're coming from, the type of kids you're recruiting. Rankings are what they are. But I'm talking about creating the core and the crux of your program. Facilities-wise, we're moving in that direction. We've got a lot of plans, but I still think there's some things we got to continue to push. Obviously, COVID may be have an effect on that in some ways. But when I look at it as a program as a whole, it's not just about what's happening on the football field. There's a lot of the things that I think are falling into place. Knew it was going to take time. You got to continue to give it time. But that doesn't mean we don't have to push and press and try to exceed all those things that we had planned originally.
Coach, I know you like to poke fun at Coach Freeman from time to time, but how have you seen him grow and develop as a position coach and a coordinator the past 4 seasons?
His ability to balance, his ability, I think it's been a really good situation. When he first came in here, he had a guy like Coach Tenuta, who had been a defensive coordinator for 30-some years, and it was going to be a challenge to him on a daily basis to be able to manage and understand and handle the room. And now into that process where you've all of a sudden acquired a few new coaches, and your ability to grow within them, teach them, make sure they understand the what and the why as to who we are. So I've seen him grow not just as a football coach, but as a teacher, as a leader. And I think, even his ability to balance a lot of those things. When he first came in, maybe, having 5 kids or 6 kids at the times were really difficult. Is where you've seen him now really be able to not just balance the things here at the office and be a leader here at the office, but also balance the external things that really give you a chance to excel at what you do.
So were there some classic Tenuta insults getting hurled at him early on?
No, I think it's just the pressure originally from all that is really a good thing if you can handle it. And not to mention me being in there a lot too makes it difficult as well. But your ability to kind of handle that is really, makes you have to grow. Discomfort breeds growth, and if you're not in some way, somehow able to handle those uncomfortable situations, whether they're on the field or in the meeting rooms, you're going to have a hard time growing and developing in this game.
Do you have an update on Alec and Bruno and Arquan?
No, nothing as of now. We'll see. We'll see as they get closer to the game time. There's some decisions that will have to be made as we get a little bit closer. But usually, we want to get through the Wednesday practice before we know much more.
Without maybe.
Coach, how impressed are you by your players' ability? I know you like to say you live under a rock, but your players' ability to kind of block out the social media noise of being a top 10 team and being in the playoff conversation when you win, 2 weeks in a row convincingly in conference play against 2 top 25 or should have been top 25 teams. How proud are you of your guys? Are you just for them to be able to block out that noise and
I'm as proud of them day to day because we got to continue to do it. But I am. And I don't. Again, I know they see it. I know they hear it. I'm not crazy. But to see them come to work, come to practice, put the work in, trust the process, seeing those things, that's what makes me feel really good. We're going to have some struggles. We're going to have some challenges. We're going to have teams that are going to give us their best shots, and we're going to have to, really overcome some adversity at some point in time that maybe we haven't had just yet. But I believe that we'll be up for the challenge because what I've seen so far in the last few weeks is our guys' ability to, whatever they're hearing out there, whatever their families or whoever's telling them, they have gone about their business believing in the things that we've said about the process and all that we've asked them to do so far.
Anything else, Coach?
Yeah, Luke, without maybe speaking specifically on your team and on this season, do you, as a coach of a team outside the quote-unquote Power 5, do you ever foresee an instance where a team outside of that those conferences would be in the college football playoff in the top 4?
Yeah, I do. I don't think that it's always going to be one of those years anyway. Things have got to fall into place, and at some point in time it will happen. Just like at some point in time, a Michigan State's going to make the playoffs. They're not one of the blue bloods. They made the playoffs a few years ago. Every year it seems to be there might be one team. I don't care what conference they're from. They're still one of those teams that people would say that's not normal. It's not normal for them to be in the playoffs because they're not this, that, or the other thing. When the reality is, it's going to happen every year. What conference they come from, we'll see. I personally don't overthink that that's as big a deal. To be honest with you. But again, we'll still have to be seen. But there's only been about 10 teams that have even made it in the playoffs. So I know they like to say about the conferences, when in reality, I think you just look at all the teams as a whole and say, boy, there's 3% of the teams that have the chance to make the playoffs. Then everybody else has about a 1% chance of making it. That's the reality. But all you're asking for is a chance. So at some point in time, there will be some others that make it that, regardless of what conference they're from.
I know you can't mention. Thanks, Chad. I know you can't mention names, but
Chad,
what has this past couple weeks done for the momentum on the recruiting front? Because it seems like kids are taking notice.
It is, and they do a phenomenal job. Chad and Pat and Austin and those guys and Kelsey, they do a phenomenal job. And if not anything, I say we don't make a big deal of where we are and what's going on and rankings and things like that. We use it, obviously, in a lot of ways for the things that are going to promote our program, and that's why you can't be mad about people out there talking about it and the rankings and this, that, and the other thing, and then in the other breath, be over there praising it and using it as a recruiting tool. Either way, you got to be able to handle it. And, I think that, yes, it has to do with success. There's no doubt. I mean, winning cures and helps everything. But it still is a lot of work. It still is building relationships. It's still believing you have an opportunity to push at some of those guys that you need to push at. And where a lot of people would say, you can't get that guy or you can't do that. And a lot of us would say, you know what? We believe we can. And as long as you believe you can and you put the work in, there's a great opportunity for you to do it.
You guys had a lot of success defending Memphis's running attack. What's the key, especially with a three-man front, to stopping the run?
Those guys up front. I mean, we get some guys that were a little bit more frustrated this week in the back end, not as much excitement for them. And I said, well, it's really difficult when the ball doesn't get past the line of scrimmage. I know. But, that's also a great thing. So we got to continue that up front, their ability to be really physical and create a lot of havoc. And, I think that no matter how many guys you got up there, the guys that you got in the game, as long as they can play aggressive, be aggressive, create some havoc, you got a chance to be really good defensively. And that's why we've had success so far defensively, because there's a combination of a lot of those things.
Thoughts on Myjay's rendition of the Thriller dance?
I'm just glad he knows the Thriller and what Thriller is. So, I saw a little bit of a clip of it. I actually saw a clip of the broadcasters trying to do it as well, and I will at least say that he does it much better than anybody else I saw try. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this.